I'm very, very pleased to announce that the first baby clone um, is born. She was born yesterday at 11:55 a.m. in the country where she was born. So this will not give you more details about the location. She's fine. We call her Eve.
Hey, what is going on with y'all, man? It is Black Balloon, and I'm coming back with another video. So, y'all already know what's going on. Alright, y'all. Now, today, as y'all can tell by the title of this video and this very weird looking guy we have on the screen, we're gonna dig into Clonaid. So, yes, you could call this a part 2 to the last video we did about soul trafficking and clones, right? Now, in this video, we'll pretty much follow the same format as we did in the last. Got a couple of interesting clips that I want to show y'all. And we'll dig more into the company that is called Clonaid. If I'm not mistaken, they are still active in the Bahamas now, as the owner was basically forced out of America and she kept her company running in another country, which I now believe is the Bahamas. We're going to get into her, definitely, because they basically called Clonaid and the people who were associated with it fake scientists, a cult-like group, because they had their own beliefs, their own teachings, and it was just a lot of stuff that was going on around the time that Dolly the sheep was cloned. Now, it's very interesting the fact that Dolly was cloned, I think, in 96. Almost exactly a year later, Clonaid pops up. So I thought the timing of that was very interesting. Now, the reason I have this guy on the screen is because a lot of young people, or just people in general, hadn't heard of Clonaid until he popped up. And when he first started talking about being a clone, being a Gen 2 clone and stuff, he was just saying things that people had never heard. A lot of people tossed it up to, this guy's just trying to get clout for rapping. He's jumped into the industry. He's trying to get his name out there. And if that was the case, it worked. His name was Kid Buu.
I guess you were born in Jersey?
Yeah. Originally, my first gen. I'm a second gen now. That's why you see the celebrity bursts say I'm born in Toronto, but that's false. My first gen was born in Jersey. However, I was cloned by Clonaid in Canada. My model number is 0112568, if anyone wants to see the registration in Clonaid.
Okay. So then you ended up in South Florida?
Yeah.
Okay. And what nationality are you?
Sicilian and Puerto Rican.
Okay. Sicilian and Puerto Rican. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that now.
Those are my two genomes.
Okay. So who's the Puerto Rican one? Who's the Sicilian one?
When I was cloned, they wiped a lot of memory, but when I stole the documents before escaping, I read that the mother was Puerto Rican and I guess the father, the surrogate, you could say, was the sperm donor was the Sicilian.
Okay, so you're a test tube baby.
Yeah.
That's what's up. And I guess you have a fraternal twin.
Yeah.
Brother or sister?
Brother.
Okay. So you guys, fraternal twins, is different from identical twins. So do you guys look kind of similar or not really?
I don't think anyone looks as similar as me.
Okay.
Shout out Clonaid.
What's that?
Shout out Clonaid.
Yeah. Well, you could actually, as soon as you die, they could actually freeze your body.
Well, what happened with my first gen is they took the skull because he initially had written in a will to the Raelian movement that if something were to happen to him, they can ship the skull over immediately to Clonaid. So they could remove a fragment of bone that's located here And in this fragment of bone, it stores all of your memories and consciousness. And with that, they can make a sufficient replica of yourself, a reproductive version of you, including your memories. And you can be selective as to which ones you keep or don't keep. And this process has been around for quite some time. Like Dolly the sheep was cloned back in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Dolly the sheep, yeah, I remember that. And they've cloned a lot of animals over the years.
Yeah, Clonaid, I don't want to say too much information. This is going to be broadcasted on the internet.
But I don't think they could transfer the actual memories, though.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're living proof of this?
Yeah, I'm living proof. Except all the memories. A lot of them I don't have because of drugs and alcohol I abused as a teenager. So it's kind of like burning an MP3 CD, right? So let's say, we don't do this, people don't do this anymore, but back in the day, you would bootleg a CD, you would need the original copy. Mm-hmm. You put it in, it reads the disc, transfers all the files. You have the same exact CD, it's the same thing. All the tracks, everything, every bar, every hit from every note, everything's gonna be on there. Now, if I scratch that CD, I may not be able to read all the files on the disc, making it impossible to transfer and make a new one, a new copy. I think it's amazing that they even were able to make Gucci Man.
Right, because they cloned him.
Yeah, I don't know if Clonaid did. I'm pretty sure like that was done from a separate company, but yeah, clearly.
Right. Everyone was saying he was cloned as soon as he got out of jail. He looked different. He talked different.
Yeah, even his teeth, smile.
Right, he was smiling a lot more.
Yeah, he did, definitely. I like Gucci. I like new Gucci. I like second gen Gucci.
But something that was very real was the company that he talked about, where he came from, which was Clonaid, saying that they are the ones who were responsible for cloning him. And he came out on record and said this. So yes, this guy put a lot of people on to what Clonaid was. And even when I was, doing some deep searching and going back to some really old interviews and clips from Clonaid, a lot of people in the comments were like, if you're here from Kid Buu's Instagram Live or Vlad TV YouTube video, like this, whatever. And these were 6, 7, 8 years ago as far as the comments. I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago, right? Now, by the time I put this video out, I'm not sure if I'll be able to actually show his face during that Vlad TV interview. Because, whoever his agents are, his company, whatever, they copyright everything. I may have to cover that up. But by the time it comes out, I guess we'll see. So he talked about the Raylia movement and he talked about Clonaid. Now, these two are the heads of the Raylia movement and Clonaid. The lady to the left is like the mad scientist. Maybe the guy to the right is a scientist as well. They're into all kinds of stuff. Basically, I guess, immortality, in a sense, is what their entire movement, Clonaid, is about. They look like mad scientists. Of course, in America, they deemed them to have no credentials, like I said earlier in the video.
Well, we're going to continue our discussion of the concept of human cloning today. Joining us in our studio and testifying on the Hill today is Bridget Boisselier, who is scientific director for a private company called Clonaid. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Sure. Tell us first what Clonaid is and what the company is working on right now.
Okay, so Clonaid is a private company. We founded that 4 years ago, got the funding to really have lab last August. And so now we have 3 scientists working almost full-time in a lab here in the United States with the major goal for us to produce a human embryo by human cloning.
Why do you want to do it?
There are several reasons. The first one is that why am I doing it myself is just because I think I had to do it. 4 years ago when I heard all the establishment saying this is so bad and all these things, I said I have to do it and show that this is only a baby. A little baby, the belated twin of an individual, and that's it. It's not a monster, it's not all, what we have been hearing so many bad things about this baby. And so we decided to do that 4 years ago. Now we are on the verge to have this first embryo.
And when do you suspect it will happen?
I don't want to be rushed into saying dates. What I'm saying is that we are in the process of doing it. We will check every possible defects before, so we'll need to make sure that the embryo is completely viable and before doing any implantation. So the soonest we could have an implantation is mid-April. It could be in a year from now because we want to make sure that this baby is completely and perfectly healthy.
As we did yesterday with our segment on human cloning, we'll be taking plenty of calls over these next 40 minutes, and we will leave the phone numbers on the bottom of the screen for Democrats, Republicans, and others. Our guest for this segment is Bridget Boisselier, who is a scientific director for a company called Clonaid, also is a visiting assistant professor of chemistry at Hamilton College up in New York State, and we'll point out that she has a PhD in physical chemistry, PhD in analytical chemistry, and you are from France, correct?
Right.
And working here in the U.S. now. You're going to be testifying on Capitol Hill today.
Yes.
At a hearing that we will be covering on this issue. What are you going to say?
I'm going to talk about the babies. I'm going to talk about the parents to-be, and the father of the baby who are trying to clone, and what are his motivation. And I will read a very moving letter from him to the congressman. I will also talk about my motivation and how dedicated I am to this project, whether it's done here or abroad. We will have to move. If there is any bad decision in the Congress today or in the coming future, we will have to move, but we'll move. We will not quit the project. So that's basically what I'm going to say. And I will also address basic freedom of science inquiry, and freedom of reproduction and choice of reproduction for any individual.
As we mentioned, it's a House subcommittee hearing. We'll cover it on tape due to the length of the House and Senate sessions today being live, and we'll get you an airtime on this hearing once we can figure out our overnight program schedule. We have calls coming in for Bridget Boisselier of Clonaid. Our first call from Tallahassee, Florida. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for C-SPAN, too. I would just like to say, you just used a word a moment ago. You used the word production. When we're talking about the recreation of human life, God originally set things up for insemination between man and woman. We also have in vitro fertilization. There are many options for women who cannot bear children today. One of the most ignored options is the beautiful option of adoption. I really don't understand the whole concept or purpose of cloning. I can understand it for maybe trying to clone organs to save people's lives, but to try to create a child from cells matching an individual without the natural force of two people coming together, or all the other options available that make childbirth and parenting intimate, you're going to end up mass producing.
Now, real quick, notice that triangle cut out on the dress she's wearing. Perfectly there for us to see. But that clip was just eerie to me, y'all. It felt permanent. It felt like this is not a matter of we're trying. This is not a matter of, we're in trial mode. No. They had donations already. She said parents to be. They already had people lined up waiting for their children being cloned. Testimonies. The reasons why the parents wanted cloned babies. The reason why she is an advocate and is gonna definitely create these babies. They're like, that was the day that she was testifying in front of Congress, basically on Capitol Hill. She was like, yo, even if we get kicked out of the United States, we're going to continue this. We're going to go to another country, which they eventually did. This is going to happen. The science is there. We've already done it. Now we're officially moving into the stages of giving these kids to parents and people who pay us and who want these children. And they're going to grow up. She said it. We're going to make sure that it is completely healthy. And it will grow up and it will live. And I thought that, that interview of her talking was just so eerie. It was so, at the same time interesting to listen to, because she ain't sitting there playing. She's not sitting there, she's from France. She's a part of this, like religious sect cult, if you wanted to call it that. They're not playing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how like people from other countries look at Americans and, trying to tell them what to do, blah, blah, blah. They probably got it here to the United States for other reasons. I think laws in France were like banning them if you had anything to do with cloning. You were going to jail. It was just like straight up. Even if you were trying to understand cloning, they were locking you up in France. So they came to the United States. And I think once it started working and it was like a private company and they weren't sharing the tech and doing all of this, the United States kicked their asses out. Like, hell no. Y'all not sharing, we ain't caring. And kicked them on out. Who knows the real story behind how everything actually happened and why Bill Clinton made those statements. But y'all, I encourage you, listen to that again. Just look at her demeanor. Very, very interesting, y'all, to say the least. To say the least. That clip of Kid Buu talking about it, I think what's like most eerie about it is the way he answered the questions. There was no hesitation. Maybe, if we want to go that route of his whole thing being made up to get clout in the rap game, then maybe he studied this. Maybe he himself came across the knowledge of the Raylia movement. Maybe he was intrigued by it and studied it and wanted to learn what it was and used it as an image to get on in the rap game. Could be very possible, right? He had no hesitation in his answers toward Vlad. I just thought it was really interesting that, he was on point. He was ready to answer all questions. He talked about Gucci being a clone and the fact that he may have not came from Clonaid, but probably another cloning center. Talked about Michael Jackson being a clone. Of course, he talked about him being a second generation clone of Italian and some other descent. I can't remember what he said. And that's actually quite interesting because I actually have a small clip from an Italian scientist where he talks about cloning as well, which we're probably going to watch next. But we're going to get into that clip here as well in a second. By the way, this picture of this lady, wow, I have no words. No words at all. Her teeth is crazy. She definitely looks like a mad scientist. Her teeth doesn't even look like they're connected to her gums. Wow. Her mouth looks demonic. Her mouth looks like a demon. She definitely fits the bit of a mad scientist. I don't think she cares about anything but cloning a baby. And the fact that they said they cloned a child and the name is Eve is the most mockery that there can possibly be. That is insane. The child name is Eve, the little girl. Y'all heard that in that first clip. Now, I'm going to play more from that one as well. That was like just a little news broadcast, basically, of people trying to debunk the whole process, right? Which I'm going to play that as well, just for some context in this video. But basically, they claim to have cloned several children, including a boy and 2 girls, and this was around 2002. They claimed the first cloned baby was a girl born in 2002, and that the second girl was also cloned. Later, they announced a third cloned baby, a boy who was born to a Japanese couple. And if I'm not mistaken, it was either this family or another family that paid them $200,000 to $500,000 to clone their deceased child who they had lost. So they were actually getting money and a lot of inquiries from couples and people who wanted cloned children. This is real. None of this is made up. And if I'm not mistaken, even more mockery, I think they said one of them was born in Israel. And when they went to court here in the U.S., obviously they didn't have any jurisdiction to go after them because they were taking the necessary steps to not, face any kind of like lawsuits from what they were doing. But this is all a part of the reason why Bill Clinton went on record to announce that voluntary moratorium that we talked about in the first video. All of this stuff is tied in together because you got to remember, they were in the U.S. at that time, or Canada, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe both. I'm not really sure. Some of the info is all over the place, and you get a couple of different accounts depending on the articles that you read. So with that being said, we'll jump into this smaller clip from this Italian scientist. Now, some of it is in English, but the back half of the clip is not, so I'll definitely read to y'all what he was actually saying. And y'all are going to find this clip to be very interesting as well. So with that being said, y'all, check this out.
We 33 week.
So the last portion of that clip where he was basically speaking in his native language, this is what he said. He said, Mr. Wilmot sent a spy into our company outside of Italy. Now, supposedly, Mr. Wilmot is the scientist who was in charge of cloning Dolly the sheep, right? So he said, Mr. Wilmot sent a spy into our company outside of Italy, saying that this man was a British scientist. And by the way, he wasn't English. We discovered that he was linked to Mr. Wilmot, and he was there to learn about our techniques that have brought us the success that you're aware of. And by that, he's speaking of cloning children. And remember, he was saying the baby that they have cloned was at 33 weeks. And back at this time, it was expected in the first week of January. Now that I wasn't expecting, but I'm not surprised that, these are Freemasons. And he actually put out there that it was at 33 weeks. Now, this is an Italian doctor, scientist, and obviously he's initiated. They wouldn't use that number 33 for no reason. Out of all the weeks that it could have been at, just so happened to be at 33 weeks. I don't think I have to, keep going on that one. Y'all already know what's going on. So he continues on to say, today, Mr. Wilmot uttered a monumental lie. He had previously said he would not clone human beings. Today, he's formally presenting a request to clone humans. He's trying to steal our knowledge by using our techniques. The second thing is that he is a hypocrite. He uses a lie to make everybody believe he doesn't use cloning. He says we do parthenogenesis. So basically, he's saying that this guy is a liar, and he told the world that he would not participate in cloning humans, but in fact, he was seeking out that knowledge by sending in a spy to work with these scientists to figure out how they are cloning children. So this was widespread, and I thought it was just interesting that Kid Buu said that he was Sicilian, and I think he said Puerto Rican or something like that. So I thought that was interesting because this is coming from an Italian scientist. If there's not a connection there, or if there is, I don't believe it's a coincidence that we've tied back him saying what his nationality is, to this scientist who admitted that they had a clone baby at 33 weeks. So there definitely could be a connection here. That at this time, the clone baby, it was at 33 weeks of being, I guess, developed or produced, however you want to term it. Thought that was very interesting, y'all. Another thing I thought was really interesting, and I just want to read this tiny little piece from this article before we jump into the last clip about Clonaid and, you know, the lead scientist and lady who was in charge, right? Now, it says, today, after more than a decade since Dolly, human cloning remains in its infancy. You know, these are official articles. They don't tell us anything. Although cloning technology has improved, the process still has a slim success rate of 1 to 4%. Now it says scientists have cloned a variety of animals, including mice, sheep, pigs, cows, and dogs. And most recently, I think that extinct wolf, which I find that to be very interesting. Now it says in 2006, scientists cloned the first primate embryos of a monkey. Then in early 2008, the FDA officially deemed milk and meat products from cloned animals and their offspring safe to eat. I want y'all to think about this for a second. Now, I found this article just, you know, doing some random research about cloning. Got into the Dolly, the sheep cloning stuff, and this really made it all make sense. Now, we talked about chicken in that video about the KFC commercial. You know, we talked about them being pumped with steroids and all kind of stuff. Make the chicken fatter so there's more chicken. But it turns out, y'all, they are cloning the animals. And we're talking about way back in 2008. Over 15 years ago, the FDA officially deemed milk and meat products from cloned animals and their offspring safe to eat. We are drinking and eating meat from cloned animals, y'all. These cloned animals are able to have baby clones. They're having babies. So they're cloning the animals, watching them, studying them, you know, pitting them in an environment where they can actually mate with other cloned animals or maybe natural animals. I'm not sure, probably another cloned animal. So they have been cloning animals for a very long time. And we have reached a point in our lives where we are no longer drinking milk, using dairy products and meat products from real animals. They are cloned animals. It blew my mind because I never knew the FDA approved milk and meat products from cloned animals and their offspring safe to eat. And their offspring. I couldn't believe it. All right. If some of y'all knew this and I didn't, forgive me. My mind was blown. And it makes me think about everything as far as food products and what we are eating. And, you know, you think about GMO, you think about all that. These are cloned animals. We don't even know what we're eating. I know it sounds so simple and just, of course, we don't know what we're eating. You never know, blah, 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 blah. But y'all, they're cloning the cows, the pigs, the pork, the dogs, all the stuff people love to eat. I don't eat pork myself, but all the stuff people love to eat, it's cloned. It's not even a legit animal. It wasn't born from a real cow. It was cloned, and then that cloned animal had a baby clone. And then it got chopped up and it got sent to the meat markets. Man. So we're eating clones, and there's also human clones out here walking around, and it could be your friend and it could be your mom, and you just don't know at this point. We don't know. We don't know, y'all. You do not know. You do not have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. Because we don't know shit.
I'm very, very pleased to announce that the first baby clone is born. She was born yesterday at 11:55 a.m. in the country where she was born. So this will not give you more details about the location. She's fine. We call her Eve.
People have been talking about defects for this reason without checking what we know about in IVF of
Well,
human
you know what-
people. And we have experience, we have 24 years of experience on assisted reproduction of human, and we benefited from that. So we benefited from a lot of work that has been done on cow cloning, of course, because my expert, the technician who did the embryos, actually have been doing more than 3,000 cow embryos before touching any human eggs.